We have a major trade update. According to reports, the Detroit Pistons have been identified as a main trade partner with the Knicks and a team to watch come the deadline. And the players that the Knicks are linked to, well, that would be Detroit Pistons centers Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. We're going to break down all of these latest reports. But before we get started, guys, about 55% of you watching this video right now are not subscribed to the channel. We are on a mission to try to reach 25,000 subscribers, and we could really use your support. If you enjoy daily Knicks content like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button because it could really support all the great things that we're creating for you. And now, let's get started. The Detroit Pistons have been identified as New York's main trade partner. The NBA trade deadline is on February 6th, and a number of teams are going to look to make a move to improve their roster. If you take a look at what problem the Knicks need to address the most, it's getting more players off the bench that they can utilize. Players that can help you play offense and defense. Players that Tom Thibodeau will trust. Because right now, the Knicks are giving you 19.9 points in terms of bench scoring. That adequates to the worst in the entire league. So the Knicks definitely need to address that. And even though the Knicks have limited trade assets, the Detroit Pistons have been identified as a team the Knicks could potentially trade with at the deadline. And that makes sense because if you look at the history, the Knicks have always shown interest in Detroit Pistons centers Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. Let's break down these latest reports from NBA insider Ian Begley. Shout out to Begley for giving us the following information. He was asked the following question via his mailbag. Happy New Year, Ian. Any chance the Knicks go after Steven Adams or Robert Williams III at the deadline? Any insight into any other players Knicks may have their eyes on? As always, great work. And here was his response to this question. According to Begley, I hit on some of the Robinson elements in these questions. I think their interest in a center like Steven Adams or Robert Williams III depends on Mitchell Robinson's health, status, and availability. Based on the Knicks' approach in the offseason, I'd assume they would have trade interest in Jonas Valanciunas, Goga Bitadze, and Nick Richards if they are unsure of Robinson's health. All of those centers were on New York's radar in the offseason. But here's the main takeaway from Ian Begley on this question. According to Begley, it's also worth keeping an eye on the Pistons. In New York's discussions with Detroit on Julius Randle, the club expressed interest in both Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. I don't think Detroit is eager to trade either player, but at the time, some with the Knicks viewed Duren or Stewart as a strong fit on the roster in a potential Randle trade. Should be noted that a friend of the show, James L. Edwards of The Athletic, also mentioned that potentially Isaiah Stewart would be a perfect fit on the Knicks if he was traded here. Shout out to Ian Begley for giving us an update on the Knicks' main trade targets as we're approaching the trade deadline. Right now, if the Knicks can get their hands on either Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart from Detroit, I am all aboard on those type of trades because we need more players off the bench that will give you defense and give you scoring. And with Isaiah Stewart, in my opinion, he's the more attainable between him and Jalen Duren, just because even if Duren was available, his asking price is going to be astronomical. It's going to be entirely too high for the Knicks to afford, given the limited amount of trade assets that they have available right now. We got to remember, at this point, they can only trade, or at least they would likely be willing to trade, Precious Achiuwa, Mitchell Robinson, those second-round picks, and that protected Wizards first-round pick. And even as of right now, given the play of Precious Achiuwa, how impactful he has been for the Knicks off the bench, I don't think that New York would want to part with Achiuwa, not for just any player, a player that the Knicks have always wanted and coveted on this team. Jalen Duren, Walker Kessler, players like that have been identified already as ideal trade targets and ideal fits for this roster. Internally, we already know the Knicks are fans of Kessler and Duren. If any one of those players are available and I have to give up Achiuwa in order to get them on this team, I am making that move. And I would think Leon Rose and this Knicks front office would also make that move as well, too. The only question is, will that type of trade package be available at the deadline? Will Detroit look to move on from Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duren? In my opinion, I think that they would be more open to moving on from Stewart. And if Stewart is available, I might have to think about potentially trading Robinson and Achua to get Isaiah Stewart on this team for one main reason. His rim defense, the way he protects the paint, the way he shoots the three, and the way he can likely play right alongside Karl Anthony Towns. He's on a long-term contract. He's young as well, too. He fits the age timeline of this roster. And if the Knicks keep Achua, they're going to have to go into the second apron and pay him as well, too. And we don't know what type of contract he's going to get from the Knicks in this offseason as well. Those are all factors we're going to have to consider. That's why if there's a good deal on the table for Stewart and it's not going to cost us the farm, we're not going to have to give up significant assets, I might think about making that deal because Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, off the bench for this team, given their defense, what they can do on offense, and the impact that they're having for Detroit, and likely the same impact they can have for the Knicks, I'm making that move because absolutely the Knicks are a better team if they make a trade like that. But the only thing that's going to determine whether that move happens is Mitchell Robinson and his health, his status, how he looks after he returns. If he's a shell of himself, the Knicks are going to make a move as soon as possible. But if he looks very good, they're likely not going to make a move unless the deal on the table is too good to ignore. Let's take a look at some other names that NBA insider Ian Begley also mentioned that could be available for the Knicks to look at the deadline. According to Begley, other players that have been linked to the Knicks since the offseason are Jonas Valanciunas, Goga Bitadze, and Nick Richards. Every single time we're talking about trade targets, I feel like we're always talking about Jonas Valanciunas. And there's a reason for that. And I always speak about it. The Knicks, in terms of contending teams, likely have the best package to acquire Jonas Valanciunas if they want him. That's because they own Washington's first-round pick. Doesn't mean anything to us or any other team. Means a lot to Washington because if they get that pick back, they can utilize it in a trade, flip it for another impactful player for that team. So definitely, they would entertain a trade with the Knicks if it meant getting back their first-round pick. It's only up to New York if they actually want to make that move. With Goga Bitadze, I don't know why he's being linked to the Knicks. The Magic are never going to let that man go. He is having a sensational season. And even if New York wanted him, they would have to likely give up a ton of assets to do it. And Leon Rose is not going to do that. And that brings us to the last name on that list, Nick Richards. You guys know how I feel about Nick Richards. And you know, if available and at the right cost, I would love the Knicks to go after him. Talk about a bench piece that we could utilize and need right now. He gives you the scoring. He gives you the defense. And he can grow with this team as well, too. Fairly good contract as well. Doesn't kill you and likely would be your backup center as we move forward here. That would push Precious Achiuwa. If we're able to trade for Nick Richards without including Achiuwa in the deal, it would push Achiuwa to the power forward position, his natural position where he wants to play anyways. The Knicks would have an even fuller bench, and that would allow Thibodeau to utilize more players. Exactly what we need. Regardless of what the Knicks do at the deadline, whether they make a move or not, one thing they have to do is utilize players off of their bench. And the only way to do that is to give them minutes. Either give minutes to players you already have or make a trade for other players that you're actually going to use. We need to address the problem. In one way or another, the Knicks need to improve. If that's a trade, the buyout market, looking at the talent that we have at Westchester, whatever the case may be. And I trust and believe that Leon Rose is currently on the phones right now, looking at the trade market, thinking to himself, what do I need to do to make a move to improve this roster, to make us better, to make us contend with the top teams in the NBA? Once he figures out that question, a move is going to happen. All we have to do is wait and be patient. But what about you guys? What do you think about the following reports indicating that the Detroit Pistons are one of the main teams to keep an eye on if you're the Knicks, because again, in the past, New York has shown great interest in Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. And if any one of those guys are available, New York will absolutely go after them. Let me know how you feel about that in the comment section below, guys, because honestly, I would love to hear from you. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and smash that like button, leave a comment below. And of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans, take care of yourself, your families, and each other. Peace and love.